Welcome back to the GMG Channel. It's your host, me, and today we're locked in for a doozy. All right, this is a question that I have kind of thought through, and it revolves around Deshaun Watson's injury yesterday against the Cincinnati Bengals, and if we should celebrate it, because the majority of posts that I'm seeing on Twitter online are of joy, right? We are excited that this serial sex offender is injured, right? Like justice is served. And so it kind of got me thinking, is this something that like morally is sound? And I don't have the answer for it, but I do want to kind of walk through the timeline of events that occurred and kind of the voices that we're hearing in the space and give my opinion on all things surrounding Deshaun Watson. So we will start with a video of the injury. This is not gruesome, okay? The actual injury is not included, but I want you to pay attention to the reaction from the fans because that's where we will start first.
Just stumbled and now Watson is hurt. Oh boy. Immediately clutches at his right ankle. Unbelievable.
The Cleveland quarterback gave himself up and was down before the ball became loose. There's a timeout on the field for an injured player.
I don't even see.
99 times out of 100, when a player is injured, the audience is silent. The audience gasps, and then it's just a hush because everybody is trying to figure out, trying to get information on, are they going to get up? Are they going to be okay? This is unnatural. Okay, for the crowd to cheer. And I don't mean unnatural in the sense of like, in terms of like a worldview unnatural. I just mean in a vacuum, when a player is injured, it is an unnatural reaction to have a crowd cheer, right? So before we talk about the crowd and everything else involving this, I do want to say that this involves nuance. There are multiple angles and multiple perspectives that are important to consider when talking about this. And my hope is that I cover most of them. Okay, we have Watson as the player. We have Watson as the person. We have the countless 24 sexual assault charges against him. There are elements of racism in this, and people posting things online ultimately may be doing so out of some racial bias that they have and feel towards Deshaun Watson. But there is also sexism involved and women standing up for women's rights and things, and then men kind of dismissing that. So I am not the arbiter of truth. Let it be known. I'm going to share what I believe needs to be shared from my perspective, which I understand comes from a place of privilege, and I don't know everything about all things, okay? I am not some moral savant, if you will. So we're going to go through this. We're going to talk about how I feel about it and respond to some of the, immediate backlash over all of this. So the first thing we do need to talk about is, Watson's off the field charges. Okay. I don't want to say issues because I think that understates it. This is obviously sexual assault, trigger warning. But the moral is he was accused by over 24 women of sexual assault, whether that be him exposing himself, him touching other women with his genitals, or coercing them into sexual acts. This was all between March 2021 and 2022. Now, again, 25 civil lawsuits were filed, and eventually he goes on to deny them and saying that they were all consensual, but then he reaches a settlement with 20 out of the 24. Ultimately, no criminal charges were put on Deshaun Watson, and his punishment was an 11-game suspension with a $5 million fine. Now, here is kind of the hinge. And when we look at yesterday and people celebrating his injury, some camps are saying justice is served, right? He got what was coming to him. Good, right? For all he's put, all these 24 women through, at least he gets a taste of something similar, an unjust, whatever it may be. Okay. And other people are saying, well, you should never wish ill upon somebody. You should never celebrate ill on somebody, no matter if they are a bad person. And I'm not saying Deshaun Watson is a bad person. I'm just saying maybe not a guy I'm going to model my life after. Here's the deal, though, and a piece that I think is very important. During the criminal investigation, shortly before the criminal investigation concluded, while this was still happening, Watson signed a 5-year, $230 million contract fully guaranteed with the Browns. So what does a suspension and a $5 million fine do when you're going to be making $230 million guaranteed? It's not a punishment, right? Like, this is not a punishment. So I do see an argument to be made for this guy would never really was punished. At least it doesn't look like it for, these actions. And if anything, he was rewarded for these actions, right? And so people being upset over people celebrating the injury, I think there's something there. Okay. So the aftermath involves the fans who were in attendance at that game, people who are coming out now for Watson in support of him, and people who obviously are coming out against Watson and are happy or celebrating this happened. So the fans, what we need to talk about is this is an immediate reaction. I don't believe that the fans are sitting there recounting Deshaun Watson's personal past in their decision to cheer. And this may not register with people who aren't diehard sports fans, but in that moment, I would argue that the majority of those fans are just cheering because maybe they can get a fresh look at a quarterback who's going to do something, because Watson has been bad. This instance with the fans cheering was about Watson, the player. So, is it tasteful or respectful to cheer for a player when they're injured? Probably not. Does it make sense? I guess. Do I think the fans should celebrate? Probably not. Okay. So the moral is, in that specific instance, with the fans cheering right away, I don't love it, but I understand it. Okay. So in the immediate reaction to his injury, I'm going to say celebrating it is a little distasteful, but understood. All right. Then we have two of his teammates that come out and support him. This is after the game. Now, Jameis Winston gave like a 2-minute long conversation to reporters about it, in which he said he was ashamed of the fans. He loves and supports Watson, and he spoke to Watson's work ethic and character, which again, people can change. I don't think people all should be a sum of their mistakes, but there are certain levels to it, I think. And for Winston to come out and defend Watson, right? Myles Garrett was upset with the fans, and he says that Watson does pretty much everything right. He's been a model citizen through college and most of the pros, saying we as humans don't have a moral high ground. Okay. This is where the nuance comes in. These are his teammates. They need to stand up for him. They need to, but I think an easy thing to say is, we don't like when fans boo injuries. We understand that Watson has made mistakes in the past, and if you don't like him for that reason, you're entitled to that opinion. But booing for the sake of an injury, maybe not great, right? But these guys went out of their way to kind of defend Watson's character, which doesn't, just from the perspective, if someone had been, we'll put it this way. If a victim of one of Deshaun Watson's sexual assaults was watching either of these two people, they would be disgusted, right? You have to think about the perspective of the victims of this individual, okay? At least that's what I see, okay? And so defending I'm not talking about player. I'm talking about Watson as an individual. It's a little bizarre, right? And so here, LeBron James, as a Cleveland native, says, Cleveland fans, y'all know we've been through so much, both good and bad. With that being said, booing anyone who's down with an injury, let alone your own player, is lame. To the ones who didn't, I salute you. So this is where I think LeBron James is making this tweet based on Watson, the player. Okay, he understands as an athlete that this is not cool to boo an injured player. But my question is, when does a player become a person? And you may be saying that's stupid. They're always a person. But if that's the case, is LeBron James defending Deshaun Watson's character? I don't know, right? And so that's why it's important. I think LeBron James is defending Watson, the player, with the helmet, with the jersey, and hopefully not defending Watson as the, sex offender. Now, the comments to this all and the reason I ask this question is because the replies to this all are about this. There are none that are about Watson, the player. Okay. And so that's why I think people who are coming to support him are supporting him as players, and people who are upset about this are because of Watson as a person. All right. So Mina Kimes is an ESPN personality, journalist, big following. She is one of the people who stood up to this and responded to this powerful statement by Jameis Winston. She says, "Is it though?" Right? Kind of taking this public stand of why are we coming to the aid or the defense of someone who has 20 some accounts against him, right? So here's my conclusion for whatever it may serve. And I don't know if it's going to serve anything. And quite frankly, that's okay. All right. Should fans boo injuries in a vacuum ever? I say no. I say it's not cool for fans live at a game to outright boo an injured player, no matter who they are, in a vacuum. Okay. I realize this is not in a vacuum because this is Deshaun Watson with a kind of a tattered past, right? Should other athletes, Winston and Garrett, defend Watson's character? Also, no. All right. I think there can be the nuance. Like I said, I think these athletes can stand up for him as a player and say, guys, when we're talking about on the field, right, like there is a certain level of decorum that we should meet within this institution of the National Football League and all professional sports. If you want to boo the guy off the field or make your tweets because of what he did in the past, then that's fine. But let's not boo him while he's laying there grimacing, right? That's my take, okay? Should people uninvolved celebrate when a serial sex offender suffers a ruptured Achilles? I don't care, all right? Am I going to put out a tweet about being joyful for Deshaun Watson's injury? Probably not. But do I blame people who have? No, not at all, okay? And again, it kind of comes back to those victims and any victim of sexual assault. If I were to stand up for Watson in any way, as a person, okay, I think it does something to diminish a victim's story in some fashion, right? If that makes sense. I don't think it's wise to ever give credence to an abuser of that magnitude because of what it can do to those who have suffered at the hands of them or someone else. Okay, so that's where I fall. That's how I feel about all of this. I think it's just interesting nuance, top to bottom, and we'll see what happens. He's out for the year. Who knows if he'll play again? And he has a fully guaranteed contract. So is justice served? I don't know. You'll have to answer that. We'll see you tomorrow.